Hello and welcome back. MC1 Gamer here, bringing you something a little bit new. I've been talking about this recently, having viewers send me their lists. There's a lot of people that are new to Age of Sigmar, and some people that have come on board the hobby very recently with the recent surge, or people that have perhaps have legacy armies and they're looking to adapt those armies into Age of Sigmar because they played maybe up until 8th edition and weren't one of the early adopters to Age of Sigmar, but now feel like taking the dive into it. Either way, I have invited people to send me their lists through the back end of my channel. If you don't know what that is, you go to my YouTube channel. You should be on my YouTube channel if you're watching this. I click on my name. You click on the About section. There is a way to email me there. You just send me your email address, and I'll go ahead and shoot an email to you. Or you could post your list even just there. You can post a list on the discussion section where there's commentary on my channel, and that's probably the easiest way to do it. That way, I'm not, neither of us are posting for the general public, or for bots or anything that scans sites to capture your email address and potentially start spamming you. Either way. I've invited people to send the list, and there's been a bunch of people that have done it. So the first one that I decided to do was Bretonnia, and one of the viewers, Paul Williams, sent this in, and he has a pretty robust collection of Bretonnia. And the reason why I wanted to try and tackle this is because it's one of those discontinued armies, meaning it's not that you can't play it; it's completely legal. There's points in matched play, even in the General's Handbook. There's war scrolls for the entire collection of Bretonnia. But the production of the actual models has ceased, and the only way to get them is either have them, or you can find them maybe still on some shelves some places, which a lot of places have kind of emptied out, or you get them on the secondary market, eBay, Bartertown, a lot of other auction sites or even forums that have trade sections, trade sale sections. Either way, this is still a viable army, and it actually is still extremely powerful. It's probably the best iteration of Bretonnia we've seen in comparison, just in general, for the power structure. And look, there's some trade-offs you're going to have based on match play. In open play, it's really rock solid. I did an unlocking where I brought in one of the local guys that I know, and one of the fellow YouTubers, Paul Conti, and he had done a list that combined some Bretonnia with Empire. And then I also had another gentleman on, and we had gone on, this is Martin Orlando, and we had gone and did a Stormcast heavy list that included some elements of Bretonnia. So there's a lot of elements that people are including Bretonnia into a Free Peoples type list, or a generic or order specific list. Just not an allegiance to just Bretonnia or just Empire or just one of the elves or dwarves or Sylvaneth or whatever, or Seraphon, but a generic list where you blend things. You get a lot of good synergies. There's a lot of great things you can combine that make these very powerful, even just with a couple of different elements from crossing into some other sub-factions. But in some cases, you might want to stay pure. It might just be something that you want to do. And although the Bretonnia in the storyline is no longer they're no longer alive. As a matter of fact, most of them are probably servants of Nagash, and that's how actually I'm modeling my hybrid Bretonnia / undead army. It's really mainly a theme of basically undead Bretonnians, which has been done before. It's not new, but I've been doing it for a couple of years now, and I'm still at it. And I'm looking hopefully to unveil it sometime before the end of this year, if not sometime early in next, and bring it to one of these big events. But in any case, there are other people that have great interest in Bretonnia. It's still, still connected to people, and affects them in a way. I mean, it's the knights of old, the knights in shining armor. It harkens back to King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. And people want to see more of that, and we're getting some different looks in Age of Sigmar. A lot of cavalry is becoming more of a monstrous type cav, and with unusual creatures that they're writing. We don't know if there's ever going to be an update to Bretonnia, or if there's going to be an offshoot or maybe some perversion of it into some different way. A lot of the Stormcast stuff, which was supposed to be this, the knights, these order knights, paladins of order that now they ride on Dracoths. These are giant lizard horse type creatures. Maybe if there's any resurgence of Bretonnia and a new army is unveiled somewhere down the road, it might be completely different. So there's a lot of people want to stick to that. So this gentleman sent me in his list, and when I love Bretonnia, I know there's a very big following for it. Unfortunately, not big enough that it got a lot of love from GW, but this is really a great time to be a fan of the army, because you can bring out your old collection or even start it anew, although that's going to be a big challenge. And here's what he sent me. That's my list proposal. Here's the collection. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more on this, and so we can see exactly what he sent. And I'm going to go and just take a look at what he's got, and I'm going to have a proposal for what I would build for a standard 2,000 point list. There's a lot of things, a lot of concessions you need to make for a 1,000 point list, certainly. And for 2,500, you get a lot more freedom. But when it comes to this kind of a list, and you want to try and make it maybe fit into and be competitive into a 2,000 point game, it's probably somebody who's looking for a tournament ready list. This is going to be by no means a fantastic list that is going to scour the net, that everybody's going to start picking, and I doubt you'll see this necessarily be winning tournaments, but it could. It's all about generalship. I don't really believe that there's any one best list in any of these armies, because there's so many ways to kind of mix and match and cross over into other sub-factions. But as far as Bretonnia is concerned, it's in this specific incident, this scenario, this is based off of what he's got, what he has available. So we know that he's got a Bretonnian lord on horse. I would like to have seen, that he had like King Louis. I think he's a good value at 400 points, but again, you're really cutting things close when you're talking about, 2,000 points cap. But I think he's actually a little bit undervalued for what he gets compared to some of the other big stuff that's out there. But I would love to have seen maybe on a Griffin or a Pegasus. I think you have the option to do it on a Pegasus when you have a Bretonnian lord based on the compendium. I'm going to go take a look at that real quickly. A Bretonnian lord can be on a Pegasus. It doesn't cost you anything extra. So it actually behooves you to actually get this Bretonnian lord on a Pegasus. I imagine you can use it on a Griffin if you don't want to use King Louis and use it as a Bretonnian lord. I don't think anybody's going to complain about that. But some people might. But I haven't experienced people that are too crazy about that. But I would rather have them on a Pegasus, because you get a little bit more travel distance and you can fly, and it doesn't cost you anything. But either way, let's just say he's a Bretonnian lord, whether he's on a horse or he's on a Pegasus for additional versatility. He's still going to have the same role. So he's got one. He's also got a paladin standard bearer on horse. I would love to have the one that's on foot just as an option, so it's something that might consider down the road. He's got a damsel, however, on horse and on foot. That's good. He's got 15 knights errant. Unfortunately, it's only 15. I guess he's also got 15 knights of the realm. These usually come in boxes of 8, so typically you'll have 16 if you get the 2 boxes. I don't know why the number is 15. I'm guessing maybe you converted one from each of these 2 sets. He's also got 9 Knights of the Realm, so he has 39 of these. So that's a lot. Yeah, that's a good amount. He's got a decent amount. I would bump these up to 16 in some capacity. Either I don't know if these are painted, or if if they can be remodeled, or swapping of the heads, or just call it whatever it is. You could have what looks like a Knight of the Realm be the champion, for instance, of your Knights Errant, and then get yourself to 16. You'll see why when we get to the actual list in just a minute. So he's got these 3 groups: 15 Knights Errant, 15 Knights of the Realm, 9 Knights of the Realm also. So total of 24 of those. And you can see the numbers off to the left. This is how much I've indicated what he's got, and I've also indicated in the columns to the right what's the minimum for the points. So if it's 8 for 200 points, that's the correlation there. So for every 8 that you get, you pay 200 points. And if you only have 15, meaning of an 8 and then a 7, that 7 is still going to cost the same amount as the 8 because of the rules that are listed in match play for competitive type of games. So after that, he's got 3 Pegasus, he's got 35 men-at-arms, he's got 35 bowmen. I'm not really sure how he got to some of these numbers, but they could be collections that he's gotten, partial box sets maybe that he got on barter sites. Either way, 5 questing knights and a trebuchet. So this is his collection, and I just looked at some options in terms of what kind of list he could build to cover a number of different situations. And we've got to remember when we look at these lists and we look at competitive play, the way it is right now, there's now, 6 or 8 scenarios in the match play book, and there's a wealth of others. There's hundreds of other scenarios. If you're new to AoS, or even if you're not, look back at some of these scenarios and some of the various books, some of the tomes that have come out, the various scenario books for the timeline has a tremendous amount of scenarios. Some of them are story scenarios, but you can pull some. And then the original initial release had some basic scenarios that were really good. Things that include portals or the Watchtower. In the first couple of books, there were some great scenarios. These are still viable for matched play. So if you get bored of the same 6 or 8 scenarios in the matched playbook, there's so many to draw from. And then, of course, you can create your own. The thing I would suggest is that you have scenarios that provide you with a variety of different options and this is something that is why I'm leading up to in terms of how I'm building this list. You want to have options in these scenarios, and the TOs are going to do that, where there's going to be different types of objectives. Quantities of troops, as we see in the match play section of the General's Handbook. You need to have, at least in most cases, 5 or more models. It really benefits large model count armies and kind of punishes the really powerful elite armies or the low model count armies that have lesser troops but lots of power, because they're going to have some trouble, achieving objectives and pushing people off of them, and getting points. So there's a trade-off. It's something that people should realize. But there's also missions that include having, that can only be achieved by heroes, or objectives and scenarios only achieved by heroes. And there are some that are connected to monsters, not in the match playbook, but there is like a monster hunt one. I think there might be even actually one in the narrative section of the book that relates to that. You can draw those in and have a spectrum. So if you're a tournament organizer, you really should be looking at that so that people have a variety of stuff on a list. So it's not just horde armies that suddenly dominate the meta, or character-heavy ones, even though there's caps on that for the standard match play stuff. And mind you, I know a lot of people, most people that I know, are not really adhering to a lot of those limitations. They may be using points to try and get a gauge for how big the game is and to have a balance, but not everybody is using the standard match play, max caps on behemoths and leaders and stuff like that. But in a tournament environment, you're probably going to have something like that. So I'm going to build towards what's in the match play book, because that's going to be probably the most universally accepted stuff in tournaments. Not talking about just pickup games at your local store with your own group. So in looking at that and getting to my list, here's what I built. I decided in this list proposal, I wanted to stick with a Bretonnian lord on horse. There were a variety of reasons why I was looking to try and save some points in a lot of cases, but I decided to stick with the Bretonnian lord on horse, mainly because of his abilities that he brings to the table. He brings some a number of things to the table. And let's see if I can make that a little bit bigger there, and then zoom in. Okay. So this is a Bretonnian lord. He's only got 5 wounds, which is unfortunate. If you want to get more wounds on a lord, you're going to need to take King Louis. You might even need to take the Green Knight because of his staying power, returning power. But this particular viewer did not have a Green Knight, and he didn't have King Louis. And the nice thing about the Bretonnian lord is that you can customize him. You can make him a little more butch with some of the allegiance abilities, which I'll get to. So let's take a look at him real quickly. He's only got 5 wounds. He moves at 12. This viewer only has the lord on the horse. So he's only going to move 12 instead of the 16 if he had a Pegasus. Maybe that can be, addressed. I don't know. But he's got some pretty good punch, and this is why I want him in this list. He's got 5 attacks, 3 up, 4 up, -1 rend, and a die 3 damage. That's pretty good. You're going to be able to do some serious damage with this. With the rend is going to be very capable. I like the fact that any nobility models from your army, if they flee within 10 inches of him on a 4 up, he can prevent that. That can be some multi-wound models. There's a lot of cavalry with 2 wounds that are going to apply in this type of a scenario, and I really think that that's important because he brings something to the table that will remove that. There's a lot of bonuses when it comes to battle shock for order, so that really helps. But should you lose a valuable model, this is a way to kind of offset that. It's not the reason why I took him though. The other thing is that he has this dragon lance. So this guy's is a monster hunter. He's anti-monster. You need something to kick out the monsters. There's up to 4 monsters that you can take if you stick to the match play rules. Behemoths, really. A lot of times, even if you're not a monster, there are some things that are behemoths, like, for instance, the Mortis Engine and Coven Throne. It's not listed as a monster, but it is for battlefield role listed as a behemoth. I don't really like that, but that's the way it is. And you could ignore that if you want, but I think a lot of events are going to keep that type of stuff. In any case, he adds 1 to the wound and damage when you charge, and you reroll all failed hit rolls if it's a monster. Now you're going to find a lot of this kind of stuff is going to be redundant, but it's nice. So he's going to be able to get 2 ups, 3 ups if he charges, and that's pretty sweet because he's going to be able to do die 3 + 1. So that's 2 to 4 damage each shot. And he's got 5 shots. So you'll see where I'm going with this. He's got a 3 up save. He can reroll 1s if he charged because of his dual shield. And then he's got this nice Lord of the Realm ability. In your next charge phase, you can reroll charge rolls for this model and all units of nobility from your army within 15 inches when you determine their charge distance. So that's big. So you want to keep them relatively close, within a couple of feet of other units that you think you're going to be charging with. Is going to be your knightly units. It's going to be those mounted units, and that will give you the ability to reroll those charges, which is important. And you'll see how this comes into play even later, where it's just this army is all about getting the charge. All of its benefits are really in the charge phase, and the idea of getting your charge off. Okay, so let's see what's next, and we'll get back to the Bretonnian Lord later. So the damsel on a horse is essential. I would like to have fit more than them, but you'll see why I only have 1. I'd love to have both the damsel on a horse and the damsel on foot. The reason why I took the damsel on a horse is because it costs the same amount, and you have the additional mobility. So you can't hide as much because it's not a smaller model. It's a model that's mounted, so it's taller. It's got the additional size of the with the horse and all. But you know what? If they're going to target you, you're going to find a way. There's a lot of indirect fire stuff. There's a lot of ambushing stuff that's out there, things that can pop up in different parts of the table. So, yes, you probably could hide a little better, but I think you want your damsel where the damsel can see the targets as well in order to cast. So unless it's a thing that's an indirect spell, a lot of times you need to see the target. But, either way, I like the mobility because she might have to get within range to try to buff a knight unit, but she also might need to, do the same for some of your men-at-arms, which I'll get to in a second. So let's take a look at the damsel. We're going to go pull that down. Okay, so this is the damsel of the lady. So damsel of the lady, yeah, only 5 wounds, no real save to speak of. 6s are not going to do it for you. The main thing here is that she's a wizard. Again, I wish we could take more of her. But and you'll see why this is a trade-off that we can accept. But the main thing here is to stay back far enough that you can get out of range of being unbound and not be a target of spells or shooting, but still be within 16 inches of a free people unit. And what happens, it's all about the blessing of the lady. And when match play, one of the match play rules is, with the rule of 1, is you can only cast 1 instance of a spell. So you don't need the redundancy of the damsel with that extra 100 points, because you're only going to get 1 chance at this anyway with casting that 1 spell. If it fails on a 5, you're screwed anyway. But it would be nice to have a secondary one so that you could get maybe a mystic shield up, or be able to shoot off an arcane bolt. But absent that, with the corners that you need to cut, you need to at least get this blessing of the lady. And here's why. Within 16 inches, you could pick 1 unit. This is probably going to be on a knightly unit because they have the nobility keyword. And until your next hero phase, you get if any of the units suffers a mortal wound or a wound of any kind, in fact, on a 5 up. What is it? Let's see. On a 6 or more, you ignore the wound. So it's like a 6+ ward save. But if it's a unit of nobility, it's a 5 up. You add plus to the roll. Okay, so it's a modified roll. So that's very important. And just so you know, all rolls like this, when it says 6 or more, can be modified by a variety of things. I know there's some people who are deluded to think otherwise, but that is not the case. There's an FAQ that actually says that and uses an example. So if it says 6 or more and there's a modifier that affects that, a roll of a 5, it happens on a 6. It happens on a 5 because there's a +1 modifier. In any case, on a 5 up, if it's nobility, which is all the knights, you will basically ignore that. And that really is important because there could be lots of shots and hits and attacks. You need to put this on your most powerful unit. The unit that you think is going to get stuck in there, take a lot of damage. I wish that this could be spammed. This is one of those great things you could do in open and narrative play, where the rule of 1 doesn't come into play, or you could ignore the rule of 1. In some cases, the rule of 1, can be very limiting and very restrictive. In this case, you only get one chance to put this spell out there. So you better put it on your most valuable unit, probably one of your knightly units, maybe a unit of Knights of the Realm, maybe Grail Knight unit, who knows? Either way, you want to get that unit, that 5 up. I think that, it's essential to have that. That's really powerful. And the fact that she can unbind is important too, but again, I'd rather keep her at a dodge, and you'll see why when we get to this a little bit further down the road. All right, so next thing he has, Pegasus Knights. Now, these 3 knights in each of these units for 200 points. Pegasus Knights do the work, all right? Pegasus Knights, let me see if I can scooch down here. They are so worth the money. I mean, look, there's other things that are just as powerful, if not more, for the value, but in this list, I think it's essential. You're getting... you're 4 wounds each, so it's a 12 wound unit. Huge range movement for 16 inches. You could sit these guys further back, wait for the action to happen, and then from a very far across the board, you can bring them in to support anything else that's got stuck in. Or what a lot of people do is they just move these guys very far to the flanks and go character or war machine hunting. And that's where they do shine. But, there's other ways that you can use them. You can use them as feints. You can use them to threaten certain areas so that if people try to move into those areas, they have a large threat range because of that 16-inch move. And then, of course, for the charges, this is a solid unit. And they do the work. I wish I'd see more Wrens with this army, but, look, you take there's only so many things you could put on each of these profiles, so it kind of hurts that there's very little Wren in this list and in this army. But I think because of the amount of attacks they do and the ability to hit so much, there's going to be a lot more actual resulting hits that you can put. And even if you don't have Wrens, putting enough, making people, forcing them to save a lot, they're gonna fail. They're gonna get their 1s and 2s and whatnot. So each of these guys get 2 attacks with their main guys, 3 up, 4 up. They get 2 attacks with the steeds, the Pegasus, and everybody knows that the actual mounts are the ones that do all the real damage. They're only 4 up, 4 up. All these are only 1 damage. However, there's some extras here. First of all, they can reroll Battle Shock if they charged. There's other ways that they're going to be getting rerolling a Battle Shock. Matter of fact, army-wide, we're going to be seeing that. They roll 4 dice instead of 2 when it comes to charging, and they use the highest 2. That's obscene. I've seen plenty of cases in Age of Sigmar where you roll 3 dice, take the top 2. These guys roll 4 and take the top 2. Now, you're very likely to get your 10 to 12s as a result. That's great. So you got your 16-inch move, your 10 to 12. The threat range is obnoxious. All right. So you start off with a unit on the 24-inch line, 24 inches away from each other, within your maximum, say 12-inch deployment area, depending on how the game is set up. These guys very likely can get a charge off in the first turn and even further in field. And if you deign to move further up because you got the first turn, you're just asking for it if it's a unit that's soft enough that the Pegasus can walk through in 1 turn. So I think they're a gimme, a guarantee. You really should include them into a list just because there's so much they can do. And for even just 200 points to have 3 of them, it's important. And 200 points is golden for those guys. Then I opted to take 2 units of Knights Errant and 2 units of Knights of the Realm. And the way I did it, he had 15, 15, and 9. I figure, again, he could take one of those from the 9 and pad up each of the Knights Errant and the Knights of the Realm. One of them could be the champion for the Knights Errant. You need 16. I'll show you why. Each of the costs that you spend are for 8. So there's no point in just having 7. You might as well have 8. And, you know, the excess that he has otherwise, which is another 7 Knights of the Realm, he just won't use these. That's for this list. These are battle lines. So you need these guys for a battle line. So let's go and take a look at first Knights of the Realm. And Knights Errant. Okay, so Knights Errant, why is it that you need, first of all, 16 of them, 2 units? Well, there's under the ability that says eager to impress. It says you can reroll failed hit rolls of 1 if this unit is within 18 inches of a damsel. So this is important. This is why you have to have a damsel, because they get extra abilities. So they're already rerolling failed hits of 1. And you can reroll all failed hits if the unit has 10 or more models. So that's important as well. You know, you need to have the 10 models. You'll see that with the Knights of the Realm as well. But this gives you 16 Knights at 2 wounds each. That's pretty good. They got a really good move at 10, 4-up save. You know, their hits and wounds are not great, but again, you're re-rolling failed ones, and you're gonna have other benefits as well. If they charge because they have a trumpeter, they roll 3 dice and take the best 2. So again, you're getting those little extra abilities with being able to get your charge in when you want. So you really want to position them where they can charge and not be charged, because otherwise you're screwing yourself. In this case, I would put them at that 10 mark and use them really as kind of bait, so that your Knights of the Realm can come in and clean up afterwards. Put them out there, but you know, it really depends. I wish that if the viewer actually had a different list, I would have something else. But you need something to screen. I prefer to have some mounted yeomen, even 1 unit of 5 mounted yeomen. Just have it out there to try and, you know, screen any kind of potential charges. You know, cover a flank. Either way, just be the sacrificial unit so that you can countercharge. But absent that, you know, I'd rather have the Knights Errant do it. Ideally not. Ideally, you put them in a place where they're not going to get charged, and then you charge your opponent, and you have a long distance to do that. But with, you know, absent that, I think you'd rather have your Knights Errant take the blow, take the hit first. All right. So for the lances, they had 1 to wound rolls. So this is important. They're going to be wounding on a 3-up. And to damage, which is good too, if they charged. So they're going to be doing 2 damage each. That's pretty big. And they add 1 to their saves if they charge. So they're going to have 3-ups. And that's barring the fact that if you might be on potential terrain, well, that's going to be a little hard with 16 in the unit. All right, so those are your Knights Errant. Your Knights of the Realm, these guys are... this is going to be your meat and potatoes. I mean, barring trying to bring in some Grail Nights, maybe even some questing Knights, the Knights of the Realm are just the most power you're going to have for the point cost when you consider the amount of output that they can give. I mean, it would be nice to have a unit of Knights, Grail Nights, but you know, there's only 5 of them for the cost, and these guys are for every 8. And you need to get 10 for these as well, because let's look at the massed cavalry rule. A Knight of the Realm unit makes an extra attack with his pendant, lance, and blade, whilst its unit has 10 or more models. What's nice is that if you buy 2 iterations of 8, 16, you've got a padding. You've got 6 guys before you drop, actually 7 before you drop below this 10 threshold, and that's 2 wounds apiece. It's going to be a while before that grind goes down, so they're going to get these benefits. But you want to, in this case, it's not even if you charge. Okay, these guys are going to get those hits. You might want to have these be the screen and have the Knight Errant come fly in afterwards, because it's not going to benefit them as much if they charge. But they do have the lances, so you don't want to lose them. So you have some options on how you want to strategize it. I would have these guys be the cleanup, because now they have, not only do they get the extra attacks, but they get the +1 to wounding and damage if they charge. So yeah, so they're going to have 2 attacks each. They're going to get pluses to their wounding, and they're going to do 2 damage. Again, the only thing that they really could have needed here would be potentially a rend. That would have been sweet. So they have the heraldic shield, so if they charge, they'll also go from a 4-up to a 3-up. Very sweet. This would be the unit that I'd probably put the Blessing of the Lady on, because this is probably your toughest unit for this, and most models that you can do it with. They also have the same benefits for charging on 3 dice, taking the highest 2. So let's go back to the list. So I have a really nice size, 18 Knights Errant, 18 Knights of the Realm. These are the core of your knightly units, and they're going to get the benefits from any proximity with knightly abilities, certainly the abilities from your Bretonnian Lord as well, which again, just to go to it, they are they can re-roll those charge rolls. So let's consider that. You got 3 dice. You take the highest 2. Well, if you don't like it, if you roll really poor, if you roll like, 2 2s and a 1, whatever, you can go and re-roll it again now if you're within 15 inches of your Bretonnian Lord. And if you happen to lose any guys from Battle Shock, you're going to be able to get some Battle Shock protection. So these are big deals. All right, so let's get back to the list. Those are your knights. And now we look at men-at-arms. I'm going to talk about men-at-arms and peasant bowmen. Your men-at-arms are needed because for the cost, for 240 points, you're getting a whole lot of men-at-arms, and these are also battle line. You need 3 battle line units in match play at a 2,000 point level. And while I would love to have another unit of knights, you're not going to get much for the 240 points. You could get a unit of 5 Grail Nights or 5 questing knights. You can get a few more of the Knights of the Realm, but for what this unit provides, I think it's worth getting this unit. And here I bought 2 instances of 16 each men-at-arms. Now, again, the viewer has 35 each, as well as 35 peasant bowmen. You'll see why in a second. So they're not great, but there's 32 of them. So let's take a look at the men-at-arms. So men-at-arms, again, they're going to die in droves, but this could be the unit that you put the Blessing of the Lady on, but they're only going to get the 6 ups. They're not going to get the 5 up ward save with this, so that then maybe they don't get it. But you might consider that. Depends. Could be a situation where somewhere down the road that Knight of the Realm unit could have gotten destroyed and wiped out after just rolling through some other units, whatever, deep in the game, and then your men-at-arms are still there, maybe holding an objective, and your Damsel doesn't have another target. Well, it's worthwhile. These guys it's going to take a lot to chew through them. So you want to try and give them some reasonable staying power. 32, it's going to be tough to get them all onto an objective or a piece of terrain or scenery so they can get another plus to their save. And that's only going to get them from a 6 up to a 5 up at best. So they're not going to get a lot of defensive value, but it's still a lot of wounds to go through. So where are the benefits? I mean, the benefits are in quantity. The ability to take objectives, get to an objective. These guys are going to run up to get an objective, so they get an extra die 6 on their run, add it to their 5. In the first couple of turns, you're probably likely to get an objective, or you may hold it, because it might be in your deployment zone. That happens a lot as well in certain scenarios. And they're going to take that. They're going to hold that objective. They're going to solidly hold that objective with these guys. They have tower shields, so they can add saves. As long as they didn't charge, in the same turn, which is important. You still can run and get this. They didn't charge. Doesn't say anything else. So you could potentially, if they're on a piece of scenery, get a 4-up save. Not bad. All right. So the Rowdy Mob, you add 1 to the hit rolls for this unit if it has 20 miles or more, or add 2 if it has 30 miles or more. So you're starting with 32 of these guys, and you're getting that +2 bonus. So already you're going from that 5 up now to a 3 up. Not bad. And there's a lot of them. So again, while they don't have a rend and it's 4 up to wound, you're going to get a lot of attacks. You're going to do some damage. Somebody wants to get in there, you're going to be able to dish. All right, because everything can be wounded and hurt in Age of Sigmar. Some obviously more easier than others, but either way, that's the case. So you have those tower shields. You have the Virtue of Empathy. If there's a paladin nearby, they get +1 to their hit rolls. So you could get these guys to a 2 up. All right, at 32 models, there are +2 to their hit rolls. If there's a paladin nearby, you've got a +3. So that 5 up becomes a 2 up. Okay, so you're going to get lots of hits. That's important, and those types of synergies are essential. If there's a nobility nearby, they get benefits to their bravery. So you want to have that damsel nearby for the +1. If you can get a hero that's nobility, which is a paladin or your lord, within 15 inches, they'll get a +2. That'll help with battle shock. But here's the thing. They have a relic bearer, which means they can unbind as if they're a wizard. They can't cast spells, but this unit is going to be able to stop enemy spells. 18-inch distance. So if there's a objective in the middle of the board or on one of the flanks, you move up to that objective, you now have a unit that's going to be hard to remove, that's going to be able to cover a large swath of territory that can unbind any spells that are cast within that area. That's a big deal. That's easier. It's easier to take out the damsel with 5 wounds than it is going to be to take out this unit with 32 wounds. All right, so far harder to remove this from the battlefield. As long as you've got that relic bearer, you're going to be able to stop some spells. So I like the fact of having this men-at-arms unit unit here on the list, especially since my viewer Paul Williams has enough for them in the army, and with the synergies they'll get beefed up a little bit. There's enough volume for some of those benefits to max out, and then there's enough that you can keep a paladin or a damsel at least nearby to get some of the extra bonuses, or even your general to get your Bretonnian lord to get some of those benefits with bravery. So let's take a look at the next thing, the peasant bowmen. Now these guys are not battle line. I wish they were. They should be, honestly, but I think that they were stopped because of how amazing they are because of their profile. So you've got 32 of them. I spent the extra points here, 200 a pop, to get 32 of these. Why? Because these things are going to wipe something off the map. Once per game, they get an ability, and I'll go through it. They've got the same other abilities that the Relic Bearer to also unbind. So they could be screened by the men-at-arms and take an entire flank where your knights could be on the following flank and your character's somewhere in the middle, maybe, perhaps. But either way, you could have one unit of knights on your flank, one unit of knights in the center, and all your militia and your men-at-arms and your peasant bowmen on another flank. But this unit here they have a decent range at 20. They have the same benefit for also unbinding spells. You can put them more towards the middle of the board, so you have more options, certainly. So that they have the same benefits for improving their bravery should they need it. Not a great bravery, but still they're adding that unbinding, and having 32 of these is key. So they have stakes. So that if they, it says the stakes, they're right in front of them. That's important. Maybe you do put them up in the middle of the table and just, say, come at me, bro. You roll a dice for any enemy model that finishes a charge within 1 inch of the stakes. So any charge that succeeds is going to hit the stakes. On a roll of 6, that model suffers a mortal wound, or that unit suffers a mortal wound. That's for each of those enemies. So if a large unit tries to come at these peasant bowmen, there's going to be 6s that are going to be rolled, and they're going to take some mortal wounds, and that can be pretty critical, even if it's a hero or maybe even a multi-wound monstrous unit. Either way, you're very likely to get some of those 6s. It's a pretty nice residual benefit. They get +1. They can re-roll rolls of 1. Because they'll have burning braziers. Of course you will, but you're not going to spend any more on that. So we already know that they can have +1 to hit. If there is a paladin nearby within 8 inches, they get another +1 to hit. So that's +2 to hit. So at 5 up base for their shooting, which is really all what it's about, they're going to be starting at 3 ups. That's big. 3 ups is not bad at all. I mean, if you had a synergistic list with stuff from other sub-factions, you could take things that potentially give you a further +1, like a Harkonnen or whatever. But let's just start with that 3 up because we're sticking to just Bretonnians. Now let's take a look at Arrowstorm. This is what it's all about. So once per battle, they can use this Arrowstorm ability. And when they do it, if they have 20 or more models, they can quadruple the number of attacks. As long as there's no enemies within 3 inches. And frankly, that's going to be hard to do in most cases because especially if you get the first turn. But certainly there are scenarios where ambushing, deep striking, tunneling, whatever, summoning models could potentially get nearby and maybe get a charge off and then get within 3 inches, and then they're going to not be able to use this ability, and that would be the tactic to counter it. But barring that, their basic ability is that 1 time per game, they can get this Arrowstorm off, and you just need more than 20 models, so you don't want to buy them once. 16 of them at 200 points is kind of a waste. Yeah, you get some shots off, but still, you want to get that quadruple, effect. And they triple the number of attacks normally when they use this, but that's pretty good, certainly. But if you have more than 20, you quadruple it. So 4 times the normal attacks. There's 32 of them. By my numbers, that's 128 arrow shots. Unless some of them are out of range for some reason. I mean, you move these guys up 5 inches. You got a 20-inch range. Anything that's on that starter line is going to get wiped out. If you didn't get the first turn and they don't somehow focus on these guys, and if they do focus on this unit, they're not focusing on your knights, all right, or your characters. But if they don't somehow focus on them, anything that is moved up because you didn't get the first turn, this literally blotting out the sun, this Arrowstorm is going to come down 128 shots. I don't care what model you have. That's 128 shots on a 3 up, 4 up. All right, so you're more than likely going to neuter some model. You're going to drop a monster down to, to half. You're going to take a unit and drop it, just remove bodies. If you don't just completely erase them from the battlefield, that's just a lot of shots. And people might say, oh, but I have this, this 3-up save, or, you're not going to, very, very, very rare to have a 2-up save before the game starts. All right. Okay, I have this 3-up save. Yeah. I don't 3-up, even if you have a 2-up, there's enough shots with enough chance to hit, even though it's a 4-up to wound, that you're going to force enough armor saves that people are going to fail. They're going to fail enough that it's going to do damage, it's going to hurt, and these guys are going to pay off. All right, that is it's a huge threat. And think about this: it's not even the fact that that it gets done; it's the fact that you can do it. You can corral your opponent or force them to avoid certain areas because of this threat. If it's a character with only 5 wounds, bye-bye. All right. If it's if it's a monster with 12 wounds, more than likely bye-bye. I mean, you better have a whole lot of layers and multiple saves in order to defend against it. It's just a lot of rolls to make. And yes, you're gonna miss some shots. You're gonna miss some wounds, but they do have some rerolls. They get rerolls on their wound, even though it's a 4-up. They reroll 1s because they have these burning braziers, and whatever. Not burning bras. They're just these flaming arrows. Either way, it's a threat. Is it guaranteed you're going to kill anything in the game? No, of course not. Don't misrepresent or misinterpret what I'm saying. But it is a threat, and it can. This unit could wipe out Nagash in 1 turn potentially. It can happen. He's got a 4-up, I think a 4-up or a 3-up, I forget. Either way, you start with a 3-up. There's no Ren, but you're still gonna fail armor saves. So yeah, let's give these guys their due. They're worth putting on the battlefield, especially if you've got the models. Why not? Plus, it's fun. All right, so moving on. Why do I have this paladin with the battle standard bearer? Now, if you have a paladin on foot, you could just stick them in between the men-at-arms and the peasant bowman. The reason why I like having the battle standard bearer is because he has range. You want to be within 8 inches of these 2 units. So legitimately, you can put the paladin with the battle standard bearer 8 inches from one men-at-arm unit and 8 inches from the bowman, probably 6 inches from each, only because you want a little give and take depending on how everybody's moving in the movement phase and what are the objectives. But I have this paladin here for a reason. So let's take a look at the paladin. Beyond the fact that if you need to have a paladin nearby to get some of these extra benefits. So for instance, you have the virtue of empathy. You get that +1 to hit if the paladin's within 8 inches, and you get that +1 to hit on your men-at-arms if there's a paladin in inches. I'd love to have 2 paladins, just like I'd love to have 2 damsels, but you've got to make some concessions here. But let's take a look at what the paladin with a battle standard brings you. So paladin battle standard bearer. First of all, he's got 10 inches of move. That's a great benefit over the one on foot. He could dish out some good damage. So he is a threat to bolster, to protect, to back up one of those militia units, one of those, either the men-at-arms or the bowmen. He's got 5 attacks, 3 up, 3 up. He's got a -1 Ren, which is awesome, and a 1 damage. You might want to give him some artifact love, which we'll talk about later. So he's got the Grail banner. It's going to add 1 bravery to all the units that are within 15 inches. So again, you're going to have the 2 militia units with 15 inches. They're going to get another further benefit because the Grail banner is there. If the banner is nearby where there's a nobility unit, one of your knights, they'll get that as well, which is good. But here's what's nice: if the bearer slays a monster or a hero, and that could happen because some people might send a monster in on those militia and just start ripping face. Giant is perfect against easily defeated little 1 wound models with no armor. But any monster would be. But if it slays them, so in other words, if you countercharge that guy, you do the slaying, you want to make sure that you're the one who takes the final wounds off, and with the number of attacks he's got, it's likely. And he's got a good distance that he can move, and of course he can reroll his charges if he's near the general. So if he does that, all peasant and nobility units within 15 inches no longer need to take battle shock tests. They're now immune to battle shock for free. That's great. I like that. yeah, you bring your monsters nearby. I'll lose the entirety of my men-at-arms or half of them if I need to. If you think you're going to munch them up, but this paladin's going to come through, and if you do the right thing, stack them up with some extra stuff. You might be able to do. You've already got your lord, your Bretonnian lord. That's a good monster hunter. Well, your paladin is a pretty good monster hunter too. He's starting out with 3-up save as well. Then he has this follow me to glory. So if the paladin standard bearer makes a successful charge, you can reroll charge rolls in the same charge phase for any units of nobility in your army, as long as the Grail banner is visible to them. Let's just repeat that. As long as it's visible to them anywhere on the battlefield. If this guy gets a charge off, any of your knights, any of your mounted units, any of your characters that have the nobility keyword will be able to reroll any of their charge rolls if they can see them, as long as they're not obstructed by some kind of terrain. So you want to make sure he's the first one to charge, because then everybody thereafter in that charge phase is then going to get this benefit. So that's pretty good. I would definitely keep him, again, kind of bodyguarding and bolstering whatever part of the table you have your militia, just because of the extra benefits he provides to the militia. But he certainly can provide benefits to the rest of the army as well. And that's the list. Now, for battle traits, look, for allegiance abilities, you're going to be just using the order stuff. You're going to have a standard reroll battle shock if you're within 12 inches from a hero or general. This is really good because the damsel and the paladin are both going to provide that to the regular free people's unit. But you certainly going to get it from the general as well. But your general's probably going to be off, kind of bolstering the side of the table where your knights are. For the command trait, legendary fighter is a big one. It's +1 attack with 1 weapon, and I would, obviously I'd give that. That's the one I'm picking. That's what I would give to your general. Okay, your Bretonnian lord on horse. So he's going to have, instead of 5 attacks, he's going to get 6 attacks. So he's going to get 6 die, 3 wounding attacks. He's got a -1 rend, and he'll get +1 to the damage if he charges. So yeah, he could do a lot of damage. So he's good. I like giving him the extra attack. You might want to make it a defensive thing. You could always get one of the other the other ones, maybe make him -1 to hit, or regenning or whatever, regenning a wound. That's fine. They only have like 5 wounds, so it's good. But it's not that hard to remove these guys from the battle in one phase. So I kind of like the idea of making them offensive. This relic this relic blade, though, I like giving to the paladin. Because the paladin has, again, he's doing 1 damage, and they don't have anything here that says he does additional damage on a charge. So I like the idea of his 5 attacks. He's got a -1 rend. That's key as well. I like that he's got that -1 rend. So with 5 attacks at 3-up, I like the idea of him having that extra +1 to damage, because there's a good chance that he's going to do even more damage to a monster or a hero. Most heroes have 5 wounds. Some have a little more, unless they're mounted on something. And most monsters have anywhere from 12, 10, is the minimum. But on average, you see most of them at 12, so that's pretty good. So I like to do it a couple extra points. Something else may start off, reducing that monster down, and this guy can play cleanup. And if it's a character, he should very easily be able to finish off most standard characters, heroes rather, in 1 turn. So that will give him that extra ability. Then those units within range gets that free immunity to battle shock. So there's a lot of things that you can adjust. If you have different preferences, that's fine. I was thinking about strategies like making it only 1980 points or 1960 to have a few less points, so that you make sure you get the first turn. But honestly, the Bretonnians are fine not getting the first turn. You walk into my charge range. You might want to alpha strike with them, though. So there's definitely that. If you're just talking about a pure Bretonnian list, you have to make some concessions. I'd love to have 2 damsels. I'd love to have 2 paladins. I'd love to be able to pick something like the Fey Enchantress. I have the Fey Enchantress. So the Green Knight. I have the Green Knight. I'd prefer to have something like that. But with the list of what this particular viewer has, this is the list that I came up with. I'm sure that you have variations. Feel free to share them if you have opinions. No one's wrong. Okay, no one's wrong. I don't know if I actually put what to get next. Okay, so I think that that Paul would do well to get a Fey Enchantress. because the Fey Enchantress is really powerful. 2 spells. It has a huge benefit to Grail Knights if you do pick up Grail Knights, but it also has other benefits. I think I don't know if it actually says it on here. Let's take a look here. First of all, Favor of the Fae is ginormous. You pick 1 unit of Free Peoples, which is anything in your army within 16 inches, and they can all add +1 to their hit rolls. That's if it's nobility, they add 2. So if you're worried about how many of these attacks are going to hit, yeah, your knights are going to get +2, and your Free Peoples, let's say your archers, they're going to be hitting on a 2+ with all the other benefits, but even your men-at-arms are now going to be hitting on a 2+. And anything that they can do to bolster that up is great. But let's talk about the Knights of the Realm. All right. So you want to get the Knights of the Realm to be able to hit and damage on 2+. Get 2 wounds a pop. That would be sweet as well. I mean, that's where you're going to be getting your bread and butter. And wow, if you could put them on Grail Knights, the Fey Enchantress, if she can, get some Grail Knights next to her, they can reroll all failed hit rolls. That's pretty sweet. There's some regenerative abilities with her. You get that with the Damsel as well, but not quite as much. I think it's only 1. Yeah, she can restore 1 wound to a model within 6 inches. So if she's kind of being escorted by one of the nobility, you have 2 wounds a pop, and you have a guy, carryover wound on 1, you can bring them up to full, which would, could save that model. That's a big deal. So one thing I would say is that you really should consider for this list is getting a unit of mounted yeomen. So now the reason why I like mounted yeomen are, you don't have a screening unit in your collection. And the thing I really like about mounted yeomen is even just 5 of them, you put them alongside, they're going to be very stretched out. You put them alongside, look, all these other abilities notwithstanding the fact that they have bows at 18 inches and they can shoot. There's only 5 of them, right? So they're not going to do an incredible amount of damage. They can plink off a wound here or there, but I want these guys to be the sacrificial lamb that blunts any kind of charging, and then your knights follow up. Send these guys out to their doom, and then have the knights follow up. That's what I want them there for. Absent that, you're going to need to take your chances, or maybe even sacrifice one of your knightly units to do that. And if your ground pounders, your bowmen or men at arms have different objectives, different things that they need to do. You want them taking objectives, holding objectives, and threatening a zone and maintaining that zone. You don't want you don't want to make them screen your knights because they're not going to do that. They're not fast enough. But the mounted yeomen move 12 inches. You run them up. You not run them. You move them up 12 inches ahead of your regular cav. They plink a few shots off, maybe against a monster or against a character, and they sit there. And if anybody wants to try and charge them, thank you for putting yourself in a almost guaranteed charge distance to my knights. That's what they're there for. And how many points are they? If I remember correctly, they're somewhere between 100 and 200. I don't have the list right in front of me, but that's what I would do. I'd get a paladin on foot for some extra ability, dimension as well. Maybe to sit in, between the two men at arms and Bretonnian bowmen, so that if you do take the paladin on mounted, they're the same cost. They just have slightly different special abilities. Then that guy has a little bit more free roaming, so that he can affect the knights as well as the infantry. And then a Pegasus. Get a Pegasus for your damsel. It doesn't cost any extra points. It gives you extra movement. You need that damsel to be able to get into places, to be able to affect both the units with her her passive abilities, as well as her spell abilities and her unbinding. But you also want to make sure that she's as far away from other units as possible when they threaten her, because they're going to want to remove her. Because in this case, in this list, you're only going to have 1. I'd love to have 2. If you find a way to squeeze in 2 of them, that's great. But I like the idea of having, for instance, a Damsel and the Fey Enchantress. And the reason why is because they have 2 different spell abilities, and the Damsel is very important to have for that for the Blessing of the Lady. The Fey Enchantress doesn't have that. She has a different spell which provides the pluses to hit. So I think they work well in tandem. So I like having both of those. That's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have a list with any kind of a collection that if you have a list that you want to talk about, certainly I can evaluate it. If you have a collection and you want a list made, you feel free to go ahead and send that to me. It can be a compilation of multiple sub-factions in a particular, like within order, chaos, destruction, death as well. And I'll be happy to go look at it and evaluate it. I have a bunch that are in the queue, but send them over to me. I'll be happy to do it. And feel free to discuss, guys, if you have your own thoughts, your own input. I love to try to fit, for instance, like a trebuchet in here or two, but there's only so many things you can put into a 2,000 point list. If you have an open game, there's no restrictions. If you don't have a battlefield role restrictions like in match play, you're not going to have as much concerns. But with this particular list, I think that this covers a lot of ground. And when you consider how the objectives are playing out, this has infantry of enough volume to take and hold objectives, characters for those scenarios that need a character, a hero, to take the objective or to be able to score points, enough mobility to affect large portions of the battlefield, to threaten large portions of the battlefield, to threaten different types of unit types, from heavily armored to horde to monstrous units to monsters, and really, the big butch characters, some good spell casting ability, some good defensive spell casting ability, and some hard-hitting armored units. So when it comes to Bretonnia, this is how I do it with this list in mind. Hope you enjoyed it, guys. Have a great day.